German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock says she is ready for serious dialogue with Russia in an effort to de-escalate the crisis on the Ukrainian border. Baerbock is in Kyiv today for talks with her Ukrainian counterpart. She underlined Germany's support for Ukraine. They also discussed the buildup of Russian troops on Ukraine's border, Kyiv's call for Berlin to supply it with weapons, and disagreements over the Nordstream 2 gas pipeline. And Baerbock travels to Moscow on Tuesday. Let's get some more perspective on the story. We can speak to Robin Wagener. He's a member of the German parliament with the Green Party. That is, of course, Foreign Minister Baerbock's party. Mr. Wagener, thank you for joining us here on DW. The Foreign Minister, Annalena Baerbock, has gone to Ukraine to show a message of solidarity with Kyiv. But can Germany really make a difference in these tensions between Russia and Ukraine right now?
Yes, Germany can make a difference, and it's not only Germany, but it's the whole of the European Union. And first of all, on the broader perspective, the position of the German government as well as the whole European Union is very clear. The basic principles of the Helsinki Final Act are not up for debate, and Russia cannot make them up for debate. It's the territorial inviolability of every country, the free choice of alliances. Every country within Europe may choose freely, and the renunciation of the threat of force as a means of policy. So that is the broader perspective for the German government and for the whole European Union, as it is a question of European safety that we are arguing here.
Okay, I understand that those are the red lines, but what about the possibility of dialogue? Because talks until now appear to be stuck. So these efforts to revive peace talks, is it too late for that now with troops stationed at the Ukrainian border?
No, the problem must be solved on a diplomatic way, and talks is the necessary means for that. But to have serious and honest talks needs to have clear positions. And this is our definitely clear position that we bring into it. And it needs to address the issues that are there. And the issues is a clear threat coming from Russia to the sovereignty of the Ukraine. And our position is very clear that we will react to any violation of this Helsinki Final Act and the security in Europe with very clear and very clear measures in political and economical sphere.
Mr. Wagener, you say the position of the German government is clear. I'm not so sure it is. A lot of people are talking about the Nordstream 2 pipeline, that is the gas pipeline, bringing gas from Russia to Germany. And the Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, says this is a private sector project that must be kept separate from political sanctions. So what do you think of that?
Well, Nord Stream 2 was always conceived as a geopolitical project. We as Greens always said that. Russia is trying to bypass traditional gas transit through the Ukraine in order to destabilize the country. And we agreed in our coalition to have Nord Stream 2 measured with the European energy law under normal conditions. But what we are facing now are not normal conditions. And so when we will address Russian aggression with, let's say, sanctions, we need to have everything on the table that there is. And that is also, of course, Nord Stream 2.
But what exactly is the German government's position then? Because the Chancellor and the Foreign Minister appear to be sending different messages.
Well, I think the Foreign Minister and the Chancellor were very clear on that, to have everything on the table. Unfortunately, there are some voices within Germany, some voices from the Social Democrats on the weekend as well, some voices from the Christian Democrats to put some of the aspects possibly addressed as sanctions off the table. I think that is not a good idea to have diplomatic consultations or diplomatic talks with the Russians and put things from the table in advance. We need to have everything on the table for that. And I think it's a clear position of the German government. Unfortunately, there are some other positions within the parties, but that is very normal in a democracy. But we need to have everything on the table.
OK, so there is some conflict there. What should Annalena Baerbock's goal be tomorrow in Moscow?
Annalena Baerbock will definitely address the broader perspective that I said in the first sentences here, the Helsinki Final Act as basis for European safety. She will address that we will have a very clear answer to any violation of the territorial integrity of Ukraine. And she will try to find out whether there is a perspective for diplomatic solutions, which is definitely necessary for peace in Europe.
We'll have to leave it there. Robin Wagner from Germany's Green Party, thank you for joining us here on DW.
Thank you.
Our chief international editor, Richard Walker, joins me now. Richard, what are the expectations for today's meetings?
Yeah, well, the beginning of a two-day trip, Gerhard, of course, with Annalena Baerbock going on to Moscow tomorrow. And it is her sort of introductory trip to both capitals, so she will be talking to her counterparts on the full range of issues. But, of course, the crisis that's been dominating the news in recent weeks is going to be absolutely top of the agenda. And particularly what she will be doing in Ukraine is giving signals of support to the Ukrainian government in the face of this massive number of Russian troops that are amassed alongside the border, 100,000 troops there, or so, these creating these fears that the Russians might be about to invade Ukrainian territory once again. And also, you mentioned it, Baerbock wants to revive what's called the Normandy format. And this was a diplomatic talks between four countries, Russia, Ukraine, France and Germany, which were aimed at implementing these agreements called the Minsk agreements, which some viewers may remember, agreements that were aimed at resolving the conflict in eastern Ukraine that goes back now many years. Now, the Germans want to get these talks back on track. They're hoping that at least if they can start them on a low level, talking about relatively low level issues, they can build a groundwork for making further progress. But there certainly are skeptics out there who say that the Normandy format over many years failed to resolve the issues, and it wouldn't be up to dealing with the scale of the even greater issues facing us now.
Now, the US is warning that Russia is planning a so-called false flag attack. Can you give us any more details about that?
Yeah, I mean, really striking statements from the US at the end of last week, with the White House saying, I'll just quote a couple of the things that they said, very specific, that they'd pre-positioned the Russians, a group of operatives, to conduct a so-called false flag operation in eastern Ukraine, that these operatives were trained in urban warfare and using explosives to carry out acts of sabotage against Russia's own proxy forces. So the idea that these people were sent into Ukraine would mount acts of sabotage against these forces aligned with the Russians in eastern Ukraine, and the Russians would say, look what's happening, we need to invade. Now, the Russians are denying this. They say that there's simply no evidence for that. But I think this is a sign of the sort of scenarios that we could be facing in the weeks ahead if we are moving to a conflict situation. And of course, what we also happened at the end of last week was a massive cyber attack against the Ukrainian government, which has not been attributed yet. But of course, there will be suspicions about whether the Russians were involved there. And that is a sign that there are all sorts of conflict scenarios short of full-scale invasion that could further destabilize the situation and just add yet more of the sort of fog of conflict to the situation that we face at the moment.
Richard Walker there, our chief international editor. Thank you, Richard.